Welcome, Spirit Bus 33 fam. Here we are. Happy June. Buckle up.
They're spiritual beings having a human experience.
I appreciate you. Thank you for choosing to spend your precious energy taking a little ride with me. And really, thank you for having this earth experience same time as me. So, as we embark down Route 57, episode 57, so I ponder, how do we flow in a state of unconditional love? How do we live in this space when we feel hurt by others? And why would we want to? To begin, if you're not interested in increasing your love flow state, this episode, it may not be for you. Maybe go listen to my last one. I was in a different energy last week. For this journey, it's for those of us where desire to live in a space, a flow, a vibe that works. It works towards seeing people in a more non-judgmental energy. In fact, many times judgments, they're so interesting if you really look at them through all the different dimensions. It's likely that a judgment is not as black and white as you think. In fact, most of the time, we're really judging someone because, well, they're not living their life according to our rule book. And our rule book isn't even ours to begin with. It's a mashup of these rules made up by our caretakers, society, the geographical area that we lived in, some illusion. Really, when we get down and dirty with it, the majority of judgments, they come from our own insecurities, our own ego. The truth is that there are millions, no, billions of different realities happening at the same time as yours and mine. How could our reality be superior to another's? Right, left, blue, red, east, west, religious, atheist. I mean, how absurd is it to truly get caught up in the drama of hating them? It's very interesting, though, when you meet them. Sometimes you still don't vibe with them, but then to tell them that their reality is wrong, but then to expect others to not do the same to you, it's just getting out of hand. It's just getting silly. So much that there are major divisions in families. I mean, yes, on the macro. I mean, yes, but in our families, over this superiority, over this judgment. Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., the Mastery of Self, he calls it, he says, battles of who is going to domesticate whom. Who is trying to domesticate who here? We're battling over, let me domesticate you. No. You're trying to domesticate me. The visualization that I get is this like tug of war. Like each judgment, we're like pulling hard until your opponent is like, just concedes and falls in the mud in the middle, saying, okay, you won, you've won, you know? So, how do we all play nice with we all have opposing opinions? Well, to begin with, water the gardens we want to grow. We lean into energy exchanges that are inspiring, uplifting, and have unconditional positive regard, love. I'm not saying that there is going to be this level of perfection. No, we're all releasing conditioning. And sometimes that's going to come out in an unaligned way. We're going to have to allow the people we love to make mistakes, to grow, to evolve, and give ourselves the ability to do the same. And then we start to step away from energy that desires to control us, that tells us that our reality is wrong, that demeans our existence. Even though that we can see it's a projection of their own conditioning, perhaps a projection of their own trauma, we water that garden less and less. Perhaps the garden returns in the spring and you see these new seedlings and you might feel aligned and return. But if you're unable to be your own plant, you may again step away. But then if the seedlings bear some different kind of fruit, and then perhaps you stay, and that becomes this newfound connection. We can have different realities and still be friends. Or we can have different realities and still be friendly. Or we can have different realities and still be civil, respectful. I mean, are we really just trying to water gardens with only one type of fruit? Only strawberries can be in this garden. All blueberries need to relocate to a different garden. I mean, okay, but when in fact, though, if you really slow down and do some independent research, you find out that strawberries actually are beneficial to blueberries. They provide this ground cover for the blueberries, they keep moisture in, and they keep the weeds from taking over, and they actually really thrive, when they're in the same area. So perhaps, maybe, just maybe, we can all thrive together if we started to view our own little plots of soil different. Perhaps we might find out that our differences are surface level. And if we can get very vulnerable, we can see that we want to be accepted, safe, loved, happy. Now, I'm sure there's a question of how can we stand in this unconditional love towards people that oppress, abusers, murderers? Of course. Of course, your journey is going to be different than mine. For me, I have actively forgiven the people that have altered my life path by abusing me. Not because I agree with what they did, not because I think it's right, but because I was holding their pain in my body. I was acting out their pain. So part of me reclaiming my autonomy, my freedom, was to release the pain, seeing that they're hurt people, hurting people. Now, of course, I'm not going to be friends with them. I'm not going to pal up. I won't even be in the same environment as some of them, but not out of hatred, out of love for myself. Dr. Martin Luther King shares, forgiveness is not a one-time thing. Forgiveness is a lifestyle. We all know that healing's not linear. So we get chances to lean into forgiveness over and over in many different ways. each with a new trust building for ourselves, showing us how to love ourselves even more, growing, evolving. So if you're thinking like, I could never forgive them, I totally get that. Like, pause and validate that. Like, validate like what they did to you was incredibly wrong. Nobody should go through that. It's not fair. And then I would also say, and then both can be true at the same time. And then I would invite you to work on the release part, just so that you're not carrying that poison around. If you're not familiar, a great book to read, which is the Hawaiian forgiveness ritual, Ho'oponopono. I'm going to read a little bit from that. Once upon a time, there were two monks who, in the course of their wanderings, came to a river. Sitting was a young woman who said, I cannot swim. If you, O worthy sages, also want to cross this river, I would be very grateful if one of you would carry me over. One of them said at once, come, climb on my shoulders, and together all three crossed the river. On the other side of the river, the woman bade them goodbye, and the monks traveled on. They did not talk, but one of them seemed troubled by something. What is it, my friend? You look annoyed, said the one who carried the woman. At that, the other snapped. You fool. How could you have contact with the woman? We are monks, and we live withdrawn from the world. To which the other replied, it's true. I have carried that woman across the river. But from what I hear, it seems to me that you're still carrying her. Forgiveness releases us. It frees us from a burden that either we cannot carry or do not want to carry. Who would want to live their life with a big backpack on their shoulders full of problems, old conflicts, and fears? Forgiveness heals, makes life easier. Above all, forgiveness is a gift that we give to ourselves. In Hawaii, after the forgiving, the matter is settled, and no one busies themselves with it any longer. So for anyone that is, joining me on this, kind of journey to live a life full of unconditional love, forgiveness, it's important to have grace with yourself. And those emotions that come up, they don't need to be judged either. They arise, the thoughts come, the feelings come, and it's a place to just get curious. And remembering that when we want to get curious about those emotions, those feelings, negative thoughts, it flows easier when our body is optimal. So being, careful when we're hungry, when we're tired, lonely, dehydrated, overstimulated. Giving yourself some grace in this process is key. Having someone to talk to, a mentor, a coach, a therapist for some support. This is a wild ride, fam. This earth experience, gosh, it seems to have the ability to hold all of these realities simultaneously, with these beautiful sceneries to keep us company. For even if we agree and decide to join a group or identify with a certain, fill in the blank label, we're still all having a unique experience. Thich Nhat Hanh in Going Home shares, if you have 100 people practicing Buddhism, you may have 100 forms of Buddhism. The same is true in Christianity. If there are 100,000 people practicing Christianity, there may be 100,000 ways of understanding Christianity. With that being said, we can U-turn back to recognizing that we water the gardens that allow us to have our own space in the garden. We nourish the relationships that see that we're having a unique experience. And we don't have to have one identical to theirs. In that space, we can lift up one another. We can cherish our differences and even come together with unconditional love, forgiveness, and positive regard. 3-card drawing from the Osho deck. First card, number 4, participation. We have the honor, I like to say, to participate in this earth experience, where every single decision, action, that we have ripples out. Our energy ripples out in ways that I strongly encourage you to study those ways. If you're not familiar with quantum physics, Jacobo Greenberg's work in the synergic field, Dr. Dispenza's work, Deepak Chopra, is to really learn just how much our energy impacts one another. And we have the ability to be part of changing reality just by working on ourselves, just by the way that we carry ourselves when we're out and about, the way that we show up with our friends, the way that we forgive, the way that we love. Second card, number 7, projections. Because we're watching for those projections. I mean, we all really, if we get down to it, we're all kind of projections of one another anyway. Learning from watching other people projecting, our own emotions, our feelings. But just watch yourself, observe yourself as you're going through, and asking yourself, am I showing up? Am I aligned how I'm showing up? Am I showing up in a space of love, or am I showing up in a space of judgment? I really recommend reading Don Miguel Ruiz's book, The Mastery of Self. It's a good one if you are interested, in furthering your journey in the love flow. The last card, this understanding card, is having the understanding. We don't have to do it the same way that we, grew up seeing. We don't have to continue out these, unhealthy patterns just because that's the norm. I mean, we can completely change reality. We can shift how we're interacting with our communities. We can shift our community. We can stop, so many things. Just like one thing, we can stop living in separate dwellings. We can start to come together as families or groups of like-minded people. We can start having multi-generational homes. We can start to heal. Because I think a lot of what I'm seeing within families, is from being so separated. You're out when you're 18. For some families, immediately you're out, right? And then, for some of course want to leave when you're 18, but being able to have tolerance for distress, being able to be around different people that are showing the same unconditional love and positive regard as you are, but we have to build that. And we're not in a cage. We're not, our trauma responses are automatic, negative responses. It's like, we don't have to continue doing that. We can rewire our whole entire system here, outside and inside. And that starts with rewiring ourselves first. And remember, every single time that you do something new, you're strengthening that new neural pathway in your brain. You're healing your nervous system. Your cells are constantly replenishing themselves. You're turning into a new version of yourself. It's important work. but we're definitely contributing to something so precious, contributing to the preciousness of of it all at the same time, all these realities bouncing off one another. All right, fam. Thank you for taking a ride on this bus. I appreciate you. To everyone that's been sticking in with me through these episodes as I'm navigating playing the role of a podcast host during my Earth experience. I truly appreciate you. Every week, what I talk about, isn't really predetermined. It's based off of what I'm working on or what comes to me right before I record the day of. Just kind of channeling in that information, and sometimes it's smoother than others, and I appreciate you all.
Thank you for tuning in. We are spiritual beings having a human experience.